Hey, Eric and Michelle, can you confirm if you see my screen?
Sure can.
Yep.
All right. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Friday and Happy New Year. Thanks for joining. This is our first session of the year. So thank you again so much for joining and thanks for all your support throughout the year. And my name is Rakesh Gupta. I'm co-host with Michelle Hansen. And here are the logistics. All line will be muted. Please post your questions here in the GoToWebinar chat, or we have a group automation hour in Trailblazer community. Feel free to post there. We are going to monitor both. The recording will be posted after this session on YouTube channel only. So please make sure that go ahead and check our YouTube channel. You may want to follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Automation Hour and our website URL is automationhour.com. Feel free to share it with your colleague. We are fully packed for year 2022, at least until June. You can see we have fully packed. If you have any use case for flows, or if you learn something and you have the tips and tricks and you want to share with the community, please feel free to reach out to me or Michelle, and we would look glad to have you. We are so thankful to our sponsor, ActiveCampaign and Concrete.io. Without their help, it was not possible to run these sessions from 2016. And here is your co-founder, Jen, David, and I started Automation Hour in 2016, almost 6 years back. And once Jen joined, Michelle is now our co-host, and I'm running this Automation Hour with her. With that said, we have Eric. Eric is co-founder of Ohanali and presented multiple sessions and across the globe, I can say. So Eric, to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
All right. So yeah, I listen to everyone that's listening in. You know, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever everyone is. Thank you for joining. Thank you to Rakesh and Michelle for granting me the opportunity to share some of the tips and tricks that I've learned with flows. Can you guys see my screen? I just want to see if you can see the slide.
I can see the slide, Google slide.
Okay. So just a little bit about me. I've been in the ecosystem since 2010, which is almost dinosaur-like, I think, for some people. I've been in the consulting industry since 2013. I have, I think if I count the clouds correctly, it's 14 certifications. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's where I'm at. I've been presenting. I presented at a couple of different places. I've done data dreaming, par dreaming twice, Florida dreaming, NorCal dreaming, Northeast dreaming, and more excitingly, we just announced, and Rakesh, I think, was voluntold to participate as a judge, but we just announced that we will also be doing Flow Fest, which is a flow competition. So anybody here that's listening that wants to put on their chops, you know, test their chops against their peers and other trailblazers, we're doing Flow Fest. It's going to be on February 23rd. And I don't know where you see my screen in relation to my webcam, but somewhere in this direction. You have the QR code, you can check it out. It's on the LinkedIn page for Ohanali if you guys have any questions, but feel free to go there, register. I think first and second places get cert vouchers on this first attempt. And then we're doing prizes as well for the spectators. So it should be a cool live stream event. Like I said, Rakesh is one of the judges. We're gonna have a couple of other guys in there, and you know, we're excited. We're excited for this. So long we've announced today, and we already have like something like 250 people registered. So it's super exciting. But Twitter, I'm SFTC responsibly. I don't use Twitter too much. I've tried. I'm still struggling. I'm on the struggle bus with that one. But I love the hashtag Salesforce responsibly, and anything that I try to post on LinkedIn or Twitter, I try to go with that one. Let's see. I think that's it. Quick agenda. So we do have an agenda slide. So mise en place for the French or for the cooks. I will go over gathering some of the ingredients of what we're going to be putting, of what we're going to need to put together today. We will be using some unofficial Salesforce component magic as well for some of the things that we're doing. I'll talk a little bit, I'll do an intro on guest user flows and some of the use cases. Talking also about, we'll go over the screen flow. Based on time, I won't create the screen flow from scratch. I'll just share with you something that's already been built. I'll talk about the necessary permissions, both on the community side as well as the flow side, to make sure that if you put this together and nothing's working, that you have they can refer back to the YouTube recording here and say, realize, see what you've missed and try to cover everything, because there's a couple of points to consider. And then the final touch, which was a fun little trick, and I have to give a shout out to anyone from Ohana Slack that's listening. It was an Ohana Slack led effort to kind of find a cool way to add chatter profile images to the screen flow. So with that said, let's go ahead, and I will thank everyone later, but this is an example of what we're going to be talking about. So this is our sandbox. This is Ohana, for whoever's not aware, is a platform for companies to connect with freelancers. I'll spare the sales pitch, but one of the big things that the platform can do is freelancers can build their profiles, so that way companies can see them. And when companies are looking for particular talent, for someone in a particular niche, be a particular certification, expertise, whatever the case may be, they're able to search and see the consultant profiles, and if they have an active job posting, even be asked to be introduced. So some of the things that, the goal is to be able to put this together, and you can log in. I can pull this, I can pull this logo, and hopefully an incognito window will show, but I technically could go not logged in and load the same exact page as well. So you can see I'm not logged in, I'm doing this as a guest user. So for anyone that's not aware, a guest user is by the name, right, it is a guest, it's not actually a user, and it's a particular profile type, and you can give them access to certain things in Salesforce. And configure certain access. It's very limited in some ways, but flows open the door to what's possible with guest user profiles. Especially in this case, we're using a community, so we can display all of these items in a community, so we don't necessarily need a login for certain things. So if people have questions, feel free to ask, by the way. If it's something that's on the topic that I'm going over, just let me know. But let's go ahead and just quickly get started and start kind of dissecting some of the big pieces. Here we have some images. We have here also with these headers, these are fields. Anyone that's tried to play around with screen flows knows that the UI or the UX, so to say, can be a little limited, right? This isn't like you're building a community where you have so many nice drag and drop widgets. We're getting better with sections and a couple of different things, but I am using some components from Unofficial Salesforce. The primary one here is the generate collection reports. So the generate collection report in particular is this one here. I'll paste this link. You have to have the base pack and I think one additional pack. All of the instructions are here. I'll paste it in the chat. I think, let me see. Organizers and panelists only, organizers only, questions to staff. I'm not sure if I can post this. I'm posting this. I think Rakesh and Michelle, you guys can see this. If you guys can post this link to everyone, I can't find the option to post to full community. Sweet, thank you, Michelle. So effectively, what I really love about this, is that it allows you to do tables, and we can do two different types of tables. If there's a user, these are all fields for users, and I'll show you some examples. And then here, these two lists in particular, they're child records. to the user or the contact. So a lot of exciting stuff that you can play around with and really get a lot of flexibility out of it. But enough about that. Let's try to jump into the flow. So in the essence of time, we don't have all of this time in the world, but I'll show you some neat tips and tricks that you can use in putting this together. So first, let me just give you a basic walkthrough of what this flow actually does, what this screen flow actually does. At the very first, it checks to see what kind of report or what kind of record ID is being passed through the flow. Once it checks, I do some basic checks to see, if the record ID starts with the 3 initial characters of a record ID, which identifies the object, right? So you can see here if it has a user, it starts, starting with 005. And this is a neat trick. We'll talk about it, and it allows me to have the screen flow behave differently. And I'll talk about it a little bit with component visibility. There are some extra tricks here, like a display error message subflow, which I highly recommend all of you have in your arsenal of things. Always have an error subflow, so especially for communities. So it's, you can control your error handling, and instead of showing some really ugly, red text of apex exceptions, errors, and whatnot, you can give your clients something a little bit prettier. I think I'll show you an example. So when something errors, we get an image like this. So for the end user, this looks much cleaner, but for you, at least on my subflow, you get an email of what went wrong, so that way you can troubleshoot and you don't have people yelling with ugly screenshots and saying, what is going on here? So effectively, the flow first identifies what kind of variable or what kind of ID is being passed through. So it's going to have some instructions for later. Then we're going to get the user record. And for any of you that are familiar with communities, every user, every community user, which in this case would be the freelancers for us, would have their own contact record. Every community user is tied to a contact record. So there's a contact ID lookup on the user. And the very first thing, we use this also for job candidate introductions. So if it's being used on the context of a job candidate introduction and not just a general profile view, we'll send them to a message saying basically, hey, looks like you've already, if they've already been introduced or archived, we give them a message saying, hey, they've already been introduced or you've already taken action with this particular individual. Afterwards, we start having some fun. So what I'll do is that I'll get the contact record to get all of the information that I need. Our freelancer information sits at the contact level. And then what I'll do is run the apex actions that are the generate collection reports. So I'll go into some detail with them. I'll try to keep on the walkthrough first. Then I'll get all the remaining information that I need. Basically here, I have all of the information that I need to populate, and I digest it into just the right formats. So that way, at that point, I can display the screen. So this screen element is exactly this flow right here. That's, this screen element, as simple as it seems, this transforms itself into this entire section. So what comes after, what follows, if this is, in our example, if this is used, it says, can you please show the subflow, how they're, oh yes, subflows can definitely have screens. I would be happy to show you that that subflow. We'll take some time. It's not the purpose of this one, but if we have some time, I'm more than happy to open that screen flow or that subflow for you. But yes, you can totally have screen flows in your subflows. So effectively here, if you're just looking at the profile, there's no button, there's no next action, but we have a button hidden that if you open this screen in the context of a job candidate review, then there's a button, and effectively we ask them if they want to be introduced to a candidate, or if they just want to archive the candidate. And based on their selection, if they have access to this these buttons, then effectively we take the following steps. And again, we always have the subflow. I cannot explain to you enough, and you'll see this here, since we're in the topic of that error subflow. Anytime there's an error, I love auto layout, by the way. I don't know if anyone here, would be great to see raise of hands, show of hands for lovers of auto layout. I am a big proponent of it. I've been early adopting since it was, a lot less flexible under beta, but I would just copy this element and I would just paste this literally everywhere. You see here, anytime that there's something that can error, then I'm basically going for it and just trying to put it as often as possible to avoid a bad experience for the end user should something go wrong. But that's basically the gist of what the flow does. So with that said, I'm going to bring it back here to the point that I start picking up all of my information. These are all very straightforward get records. Just based on the fact that I found a user record, I will review and I will confirm that I have a contact ID, and then on the contact ID, I'll pull that contact and grab all of the information. Nowadays, we don't need to worry about like pulling only all the fields that we need. We can just grab all of the information, and I'll use this generate collection report. So this generate collection report Apex action, I can't remember who it was that put this together on Unofficial Salesforce. It is a godsend of being able to visualize information cleanly. Not only is this a fantastic tool to use on screen flows, this also works just like you saw it here, like all of these tables and everything. Just like you saw it here, all of this works in rich text emails. So you can send emails with columns and child records. So, if you want to send, for example, an invoice with, the basic information and then the invoice line items as child, you can do all of that. And it is, it's just one of my favorite components that the folks over at Unofficial Salesforce has put together. This collection report is fairly straightforward. So there's instructions on all of this. The important piece is that you have to enter in the object that you're going to be pulling information from. Now, you have to have your get element before this because all the records, the collection or the record variable that holds the information needs to exist by the time that you're processing this information through. I won't spend too much time. There's instructions on these. What I'll show you is the two different methods that I use. So in this example here, you have the contact level fields. Let's just call it the parent for the sake of the argument, because this is the contact. And then here you have the child level fields, which are two different objects that you have right here. So here we're doing at the parent level, right? The contact. So in this level, you only have one record because it's the parent itself. So what I do is that I break it into, instead of having one column, because if I were to just do one generate collection report and add all the fields that I need, I would just squish everything together. So what I do is that I just create multiple collection reports on the contact just to create different lines. This table and this table, same exact record, just showing different information. So you can see here, at first I have the category, the capacity, the expertise, just the basic fields. I'll cover the others here, right? So you can see generate contact table, generate contact second table. Just as a matter of trying to keep things clean as we go with regards to organizing our flow. And then afterwards, I'll get the child records. So we have their cloud expertises, and then we have their certifications, and we'll generate the table for those. Just open those. So here you can put the same exact thing here. You select the object that you're going to be using this for, and then here you have the fields that you're gonna display. You have different display modes. You can read the documentation. I've been using table. And then the header style string, again, documentation covers this. I don't think it's the purpose of this flow, just in the essence of time to go over it. But effectively, this is what allows you to select the colors of the headers, the fonts of the text, and you can play around with this. You know, this is a text template that you have all of your information in. Then here you have some basic information, like you can hide the header if it's not useful to you, and then here, most importantly, you will indicate the collection, right? That get needs to precede, that get element needs to precede the generate collection report. So if you're using a collection, you have to use this variable, but if you're using a record variable, then you use this one. So if I switch, let's take a look at this one. You see here, this one uses input record versus this one that uses it versus the other one that uses input collection. Just a clear distinction. The documentation on the blog post is actually very well put together and should hopefully answer all of your questions, but this is just a practical example of how we're going to use this. So let's just say you put this flow together, you know, you want to run your debug, and let's just put the debug in there, and once this loads, I can just slap on a record ID, and boom, everything works. This is beautiful. But we're going to run into the question, how do I make this display? Right? How am I going to make this visible to others? Because a regular user, I could put this on Lightning, on Salesforce Lightning edition for internal users, and this would be perfectly fine. I could put this in a community and give access to community users, and this would be perfectly fine. But how do I make, you know, external people be able to see this information? If you want to try to display profile information, or, you know, any other use case that you may have. So this is when you enter into the world of guest users. Now, guest users are managed primarily through your communities. So if you can fire up a community or an experience, as they're called today, I still refuse to call it an experience. I can't get used to it. I am a community guy. But if you have an experience and you are looking through your preferences, actually, I'm sorry, you have to look at the builder. My apologies. If you're looking at the builder, here's just the candidate review page, no big deal. If you come under settings, then general, here you have your guest user profile. And from here, you can make the modifications to have access to the guest user profile and what guest users can and cannot do. Let's talk a little bit about permissions. I'll come back later to the flow. I'll leave the image the image hack for last, because a lot of people struggle with getting images in there. There are a couple of permissions that you need to be aware with regards to the guest user profiles. So with guest user profiles, the most important one that you have to cover is that you have to give them the permission to run flows. If they don't have permission to run flows, your flow will just error and give them no permission, regardless of how you run this. So without this, they won't be able to do anything. The next piece that we have to give them permission to, depending on, actually, that you don't even have a choice to say the truth, is back on the flow. If I come back on the flow, you have to go to the flow, go under advanced, and you have to run the flow at system context without sharing access all data. Because they're accessing information, at least in this use case, that is user driven, that is contact driven, to give them access to those records, you have to give them access to you have to run the flow in this format to give them access to the data that the flow is going to call. So it doesn't try to enforce sharing rules and permissions, of which the guest user will have almost none. So for you to be able to put this together. So that's permission number 2. Those are the key pieces that you need to be aware. Number 3, coming back to the profile. If you're using cool tricks like unofficial Salesforce components, most of those components are Apex classes. So you have to come here and go to the Apex class access and give them access to the right classes. You don't want to give them access to too much, but make sure that you give them just enough to be able to run the flow successfully as a guest user. So those are common things that people can get tripped up about. Now, the next one, this one is not necessarily a requirement, but if you're using files to upload your images, so I will show an example. If I want to just insert an image here, and this is sandbox, everyone, of course, so it doesn't matter. If I wanted to insert a file here, and I just want to put an image, all of these are files. You have your every file that you upload goes under your asset library. These files are protected. They are not externally available. So if you want to have images in your flow that will reference, that are in the asset library, that will be referenced in your flow, there's a different place, and you'd imagine Veeam profiles, but there's a different place that you have to come, and it's under the administration for your community. Under administration, you need to go into preferences, and here you have a couple of different guest user permissions that you can play around with. So in this case, you can click and select to let the guest users view asset files and CMS content available to the site. If you're using CMS content, it's another great example. Now, I'm going to use I'm going to use the link that we have here. Let me just click on this because I think Rakesh or someone posted. This is the link. This is a live production link of our registration for FlowFest. So here, to give an opportunity to show, Rakesh's good-looking mugshot here. This is a CMS collection. I've loaded using Salesforce CMS, perhaps for a different time or a different session, but this is all using CMS. If I did not enable that feature for the guest users, they would not be able to see these images. These images just would not load, and they would error when loading. So whether you're using these images directly on a flow or you're using it directly on community components, you have to make sure to give them, where were we? Here we go. You have to make sure to give them these permissions. There are other permissions here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can go through these and make sure to review what's applicable to you versus what's not applicable to you. So, all right. We talked a little bit about permissions. We went over the permissions to run the flow. We talked about the Apex class access. We talked about the settings under the administration. The next piece that, the next piece that I want to talk about, since we're talking about permissions. Now, one thing I want to share, guest user flows, we are running a guest user flow here where we're running a system access. So technically this is a blank check on permissions. So anything that you put on this flow could in theory be accessed by any guest user. One thing that I want to share with everyone, just as a disclaimer, that's extremely important here is component visibility. So for those that are not aware, component visibility is hiding things based on certain criteria. So this button bar is technically hidden. So if they have a, if it's a job candidate record that got submitted, then we display this. Now, I'm hiding this on a general profile. If I pull an ID, and I can try to pull an ID on the side for a job candidate record just to show, but just because this is hidden under component visibility doesn't mean that this is hidden from the user executing this. If you go into, if you have this hidden, if you're clever enough and you want to inspect the record, and if you want to go into inspect, you'll be able to chase down everything that's there and hidden at the same time. So the reason why I bring this up is that in the Salesforce responsibly moment, I just want to share saying, hey, if you want to put something that can only be visible to a system administrator loading the flow, if you want to put some sensitive information in here that you want to use component visibility to try to hide, be very careful, because that information can be visible if someone is skilled enough to be able to properly inspect the elements and review all of the all of the data that this flow is loading. Anything that's outside, it's flows are fairly secure to the point that they won't be able to access anything that that you're not displaying here. But always be on the side of caution with what information you're displaying, and test and test and test. Again, this flow, if I had to put it together, wouldn't take me too long to do, but I've spent more time QAing this flow than putting it together. And that includes the final piece, that is the image load. Because I have to work with a lot of the Ohana Slack folks, and we work together to figure this one out. Oh, but before we go into that piece, another portion. So at this point, we've created a flow, right? We have gone through the process of setting up a guest user. We have talked briefly about putting this in the in this community page, but how do I know, right? If you put it in the community page and you load it, technically you have a community page and you have a flow. How do we know, right, what person we're looking for? And the answer to that is URL hacking. What you can do, back on the experience builder, go back here. This is the candidate review page on the experience builder. If I bring up the screen flow here, one of the things that you can do is that you can use your input variables to be able to pass records. So ideally, you can dictate different variables and be able to specify those here so you can pass those through. So on the flow, let's go back. If I just go in here, my one input variable is record ID. Now that record ID can be of tons of different things. If you know the world of URL hacking, you can do multiple input variables if you'd like, if it fits your case. But a very simple trick with basic URL hacking is that you determine your input variable, and then what you do is that on the page, here we go. Here's the page by itself. Effectively, everything starts with a question mark. And, apologies for my autocomplete that's like giving away the answers as we go. But the question mark allows you to type in, the variable that you need and be able to, and then be able to put in the value that you want. In this case, the unique identifier. So in this case, I can easily pick one of these. And what this does is that this is passing, the URL is passing this command, or this value through to the flow. And the flow can then use this to start its query and start pulling up all of the information that you need. So a 005, many of you probably know, is a user. But in my end, I have a custom object. So this is where the flow really starts, because this first section coming back to it basically states what kind of record are we dealing with. And it can handle two different types of records from two different objects. So this URL hacking is what connects all of the dots together between the flow that you're putting together and how you're displaying it on a, in this case, community page. So that's how all of this comes together. Now, to give some time for questions and the subflows and all those other items, I will just go to the final piece. I'll also run through my checklist to see if there's anything super important that I forgot to talk about, but it's in particular the image. And this is where this get user record is here. Now, you can see here that we have this text template chatter photo. This is a plain text template. And it has to be used in a weird combination. So there are components out there to do this, and I struggled with components like and I think we even installed a couple on these here. I struggled with those components. They were really limited, and ultimately the solution was declarative, which is rare, but it can happen. So this is a very simple plain text template. So let's go ahead. Here, it's so all this is doing, all that the text template chatter photo does is that it uses a little bit of HTML to dictate the image settings, the image criteria. So here I can specify the width, the height, the title, and then the source for the image itself. And then let's, how can I show this? I'll show the formula itself and we can go afterwards. Then the rest, right, the image is this formula. So under the get user record, you'll have different photos in there. And if I just do an assignment, just for example, if I go into the get user and I type in photo, you'll have tons of different types of photos. You'll have the banner for the user profile. You'll be able to have all of the profile IDs. You have small, medium, and the full photo in different sizes. So you have all of these things that you can get from the user record variable. All of that's available to you. The only trick is how to display it. So if you try to use, just cancel this out. If you try to use the full photo URL, you're gonna get your domain and the remaining piece. So if I just, like, you'd get the full domain here and then everything that follows. And that's your get medium photo, all of those items. If you just use a simple substitute formula to take out all of your domain portion. Now, this is a little hard coded. I'll explain that in a second. But if you just remove all of that initial portion and start your and return a formula that starts at the first backslash that follows the .com, then you can use that formula to reference on the text template, and that will load your image. So that is how we can declaratively, 100% declaratively, with no code, absolutely no code, you can load an image right into your a user profile image into your flow. The only final piece, and I will pull this here, I'll pull this to the side for 1 second, just so I can log in as the user and show you. There's one final piece that needs to be considered, is that anyone that's uploaded a profile image, actually I could technically do it from here. Anyone that's uploaded a profile image knows that, or may have seen that there's this checkbox. So not only do we have to run as a system access, not only do we have to, and this is specifically for chatter photos, just so everyone's aware. If you want to use chatter photos or be able to display, let's just say you want to display your account team, right, into a community page with their photos, this checkbox must be enabled. If they do not enable, if the end users do not enable this checkbox when they upload their photos, then your account team to your customer will just be a bunch of Astros, which may not be a terrible thing, but I'm not sure how good Astro is with his developer skills. I've seen him and Einstein headbang at Dreamforce, but I have yet to see Astro's declarative skills. So, but that is the final piece with regards to visibility, to make sure that that chatter photos will work. This final bit tidbit was particular to that. So with that, we covered pretty much everything that I wanted to go over. Let me just quickly look at my checklist. We talked about some unofficial Salesforce components. We talked about users with the photo, making sure it's publicly available. We talked about that flows, the screen flows must be run as system users. We talked about the component visibility and the security of component visibilities. We talked about the image trick. And then on the community side, we talked about everything that's needed to insert the flow into a community page and all of the permissions required also on the guest user side. I have covered everything that I wanted to cover and also leave some time on for the audience. So with that said, from my side, I want to thank everyone. I want to kind of pass this one back to Rakesh and Michelle. And you know, if there's questions, I can start with the subflow if we want to do it that way, and or just start tackling any other questions. So
yeah, if you want to start with the subflow, we'll start there, and we've got a whole laundry list of questions come in, so we'll just go down the list, and we try and have a no question left behind policy here too. So let's.
Okay, I'm okay. I'm okay for a couple of minutes. So after the meeting, so if we need to go long, I think we can. So where is first things first, everyone? You know, be a good admin. You know, put descriptions in there. We're a very declarative org, as you can tell. Here it is.
So I think the big question with this one is being able to show how the subflow can show an error message. I think there was a question about whether subflows could have screens or not.
Yeah, so that question is very easily answered. It's a yes. There's no feature or functionality. There's no setting you have to turn on. You can, and I think, so if whoever asked the question had this issue before, I can definitely tell you that it is something that's changed as of a couple of releases ago. I think this is probably 3 releases old, if I have to guess. But it's definitely something it hasn't always been there. The ability to use screen flows or screen elements in subflows is new. On my side, this is what the screen flow looks like. I have an input variable, which is a text fault message. and I have it as an, like I mentioned, as an input value variable, specifically if I want to have an email sent to administrators as to what the error was. Not always is that the case. Not always am I interested in it. So this, having this input variable and choosing on the primary flow if I want to pass that value or not, allows me to control it, because if it's something that, if it's a brand new flow, I'll probably want it, and I want to make sure that I'm constantly monitoring it. But after a while, I'll probably just want to turn it off, just depending on the situation. And sometimes I may not want it regardless, because I might just be forcing the error intentionally. So at that point, I don't need a message as to why I forced the error intentionally. I just want them to be led to that page because either they've already completed what they needed to complete, and I don't want them to see that information again, or whatever the case may be. So it's a very simple decision element that says, hey, is that input variable null? And if it's not null, then what I'll do is that I'll just have an email sent to us. I use org-wide emails quite a bit, but it's just a very basic, very basic send email action. And we have, I don't know if anyone uses aliases, but I'm a big fan of email aliases. So that way I can just get it, be notified, and we have a particular inbox just for those errors. And then at the end, it's just a very simple, error message, just something to be prettier than some Apex error message that users would get otherwise, and go at it from there. We've been debating, I think the next iteration of this would be something where I can allow a guest user or even a regular user, whatever the case, I could allow the user to create a case from this. So that way I could put some fields or some options, say, would you like to create a case? Yes. So instead of emailing us, they can just create a case, and we are immediately start tracking how many open cases we have. But that's for the future. The beauty of it is that I can just, as this is a subflow, I can just toss this literally everywhere, and saves me a ton of time in making flows cleaner and experiences cleaner. So.
Okay, so follow-up question. Follow-up question before we get off of the subflow. How would you structure an error subflow for a non-screen flow? Would you create a task, send an email, or how would you deal with that?
Yeah, so you can do something very similar. To this. All you'd have to do probably is that you need to do a decision element to skip the screen flow. And do like a variable, like a checkbox variable to say show screen element or avoid screen element, something like that, like checkbox avoid screen element. I'd call the variable that, and that way you can just make sure you get the email and that you notify yourself with the email. I'm not sure if there's a ton of value, because off the top of my head I can't think of a use case, because if your flow errors and it's not a screen flow, then you'll just get an email regardless in most senses. So I haven't done anything to try to handle the error from a user side on a non-screen flow. They'll just get the error. On that side, I haven't played around with that one.
Okay. So let's go back up to the top and let's look through some more questions. So one comment, generate collection report will revolutionize how I build flows. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 thumbs up for me for that one too. So Dylan would like to know, is the styling for your headers also done within the generate collection report component?
So the styling, the header style string, the unofficial SF covers this. It's basically a text template that you just reference it on the style string, on the header style string input variable for the Apex action. So there's like a basic example there. I'm gonna, let me butcher this as I say this, but I believe it's CSS. I'm not like it. I think it leverages CSS for you to build that. You just have to write it out on the text template. Make sure it's plain text. If you do rich text on the text template, it'll error. But they have examples there. I'm not a big CSS guy, honest truth. I just kind of, copy pasted what they had there and just pulled the color code that I needed to just make it look like how I needed. So yeah.
Okay, so a note from Jeffrey, the run flows is going away for guest user profiles. So you'll need to grant explicit access to each flow the guest user needs to be able to run. So that's just
yeah, that might be a good one. I've heard about that. I haven't read that in any release note, but I haven't also been chasing. I've been pretty busy, so that is a fair point. The only thing that I can say is that whatever API version 54, I think, on flows on the sandboxes, and so far I'm still being given the option to do that on the profiles. So if that's going to change, at least the latest sandbox preview release versions, I haven't seen that limit yet. But it's good point.
Yeah, I actually ran into that when building my portfolio site, where I had to actually override the access and do it at the at that level. So
yeah.
Anyway, definitely good to know, but your experience may vary, right? Test and sandbox.
And test and sandbox first, but I think one of the important pieces too that everyone, this is my experience, maybe others have different, but Salesforce tends to have a general negative view to guest user flows. In some ways, it could be too much power into one's hands if you're not extremely careful, and they're always trying to limit what you could do with a guest user flow. I don't think guest users profiles are going away anytime soon. I really, really doubt that. But yeah, you definitely have to be on your toes, because every now and then Salesforce is just trying to see how they can tighten here and there, because it's all about not exposing unnecessary data, right, to people publicly. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, next question. Again from Dylan. Do you have any tips for testing your flow for a guest user?
Yes, I spend hours on my phone just testing my flows, literally hours, because I'll just be playing around and just trying to break them in different ways. So it's not terribly hard to do it. All you need to do is, if you have a community in a sandbox environment, publish a page with your flow. Make sure that everything that we covered in the meeting today is there. Make sure that the guest users have the right permissions at the community administration level, at the guest user profile level, and then make sure that your URL hack and your record variables are being passed correctly from the URL into the flow through the input variables. If you have all of that, then whatever the URL is with the URL hack, try a couple of different IDs that you can have. Just start playing around with it. Start loading it in incognito windows if you want to do it on the desktop when you have like a couple of examples saved on a notepad file or whatever. Or like what I do is that I just Slack the URLs, like I'll take it from the notepad file, I'll send it to myself via Slack, and then I'll just open it on my phone, and I'll just start opening them on my phone, because my phone wouldn't be logged into Salesforce on the browser. And I can start looking at it from that perspective, and I can see how something looks in desktop versus mobile, because anybody can track statistics. We're becoming a very mobile dominated community. Even at our level, I think we're becoming very, like, all the numbers that I have for people that go to our website, that access or LinkedIn pages, anywhere that I have a Google Analytics, everyone's going mobile. So I'm just trying to try to make sure that when I test, I also test for mobile. So those would be my tips.
Okay, next one. It would be great if you can quickly show us what Apex classes you had given permission to for using the unofficial Salesforce component that you used.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can share that. It's fairly straightforward. but because I'll share with you, but it varies for every case. So you just need to know what Apex classes, are the issues. And if you don't know how to do that, the easiest way is to just, did I close it? Do I have a tab open? Let's just reopen it. If you like, the easiest way to find out, if you don't know how to do this, the easiest way to find out is just build your flow and run it. The very first error message is going to be they don't have access to this Apex class. So then just go to the Force Anywhere profile and then just add them. But particularly for this one, the two that they need is the ERS data table control. Actually, I don't think they need a data table controller. But here's where all the Apex classes are. I think they need, for my end, they need to send better email. They might not need anything for the generate collection report, but they need it for the email component. So for us, we use the send better email. But yeah, it's a good case of trial and error. If you don't know how to do it, just just test it out, and the error message will tell you almost immediately. So at least that's my way. That's my accidental admin way of figuring things out sometimes.
Awesome. Okay, so next question again from Dylan. I love how much interaction we're getting here. How does a guest user search for candidates?
How does a guest user search for candidates? Oh, well, that's so that's a good question. Maybe I should have prefaced the meeting. So we're sending these links to them. So the way that Ohanaly works right now, in this particular scenario, is that we can email, and funny enough, that email uses generate collection reports and it supports hyperlinks. So the hiring specialist at Ohanaly will send the company looking for a specialist, and they'll send a list. They can just add as many candidates as they want that fit the profile for what they're looking for, and then they can just send everything in an email. So that email that has the tables similar to what we've seen today will have links with the hard-coded IDs. So every hyperlink on that email has the correct unique identifier, plus some extra things too. Because for security's sake, we don't want to make sure that just anyone guessing random IDs is going to open stuff on our Salesforce. But that's more advanced level stuff that I don't have time to cover today. So yeah, from a searching perspective, is that they don't do much searching. We're just giving them the links of what they can review. I'd be careful. It's certainly doable, but I'd be careful with just trying to expose like all candidates and be like, here, search everything in my object, right? Make everything public to you. Just tell me what you like. Yeah, that opens a lot of can of worms. It has to be very carefully done if you want to try to do it that way.
Okay, so this may be a good follow-up for that from Tim. It asks, can you show the page that lists the people to link into the flow?
Page to link into the flow.
So I think that is, you're sending an email with that page with the record hack.
Let me, am I showing my screen?
Not at the moment.
No. Okay, all right, let me, good, intentionally so good.
Chime back in if you understood the question.
Let me just, because this partial sandbox might have some live data, let me just try this first and see if I can show you. If not, I can try to do a screenshot for you, just out of the sake of live data. I don't want to let's see, what do we have?
Okay, yeah, the guest user could search for candidates and be presented with a list, which I think we just covered is not how that works. So
yeah, so I'm going to use 3 people that I hopefully have their permission to. I mean, they're very public of being part of the Ohanaly group. So I will just share this. I'll share this here. Let me just share it this way. All right. So effectively, this is a screen flow that is going to send an email. So effectively what we're doing is that, can't tell you how much generate collection report revolutionized my life. I use it for breakfast, if it, like, seriously. So effectively here this is just an example that you can see we're hard coding. All of these links are hard coded with different IDs for these particular candidates. So you're able to basically just program that in, and then they click on it, and that'll just take them directly to that page.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. So next question from Tamar. Don't you need to add read permissions to the guest user profile for the objects?
No. If you're running the flow as under system context access all data, you do not need to give them permission to the object. You wouldn't even be able to in most cases, actually. I don't think you can give access to the object, like especially like the custom objects maybe, but I don't think the standard CRM objects you can.
You can for custom objects. I have done that. I don't know about the standard object.
Yeah, I don't think the standard objects, it'd be kind of weird if you could give standard object permission to guest users, but not like community users or things like that. But yeah, I know for custom objects, you probably can, but for the intents of a flow, you don't need to.
Yep. Okay, so from Monica, a question, and it looks like this is a multi-part. So can you access CMS content in a flow? And by that, she means accessing and working with the values to decide what records to show. For example, content, news, depending on some criteria.
I have not tried that. If there's one person in this world that can answer that question, it's Megan Broadkey from Ohana Slack. When it comes to communities and flows, there's no better person that can put two and two together than Megan. She would know that answer for sure.
I agree. She is like the community goddess of the entire world.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like she's managed to unwrinkle several wrinkles that I've had questions on with communities. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So next question from I'm gonna butcher this name, so I super apologize. Virel. Would the same kind of flow run in a public site?
I haven't tried. I wanna answer to you, but I haven't tried. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with public sites. Yeah, I'll just have to defer. It's worth a shot, but if regular Lightning flows load in public sites, then I don't see why it wouldn't. Especially if you do all system access and it pulls a guest user profile.
I think it probably can. I have a flow running on a public site that I've got. So again, don't know that we could say for sure, but I think I would second your answer of don't see why not.
The only question that comes to my mind that I don't know how to answer is that a guest user profile is usually tied to a community. So if there's a guest user profile that's tied to that public site, which I think that happens if you do a force.com sites or something like that. So yeah, so long as you can, yeah, I'll defer to you, Michelle. You have a little more experience, but I don't see why not. I think that's the best answer right now.
Okay, so another from Tim, when talking about testing, he suggested looking at the Responsively app. It's a free app that lets you see multiple viewport sizes next to each other. So you might be able to look at, desktop, tablet, and phone kind of side by side. So for anyone interested in testing, it looks like Responsively might be an interesting app.
Totally want to give it a shot.
All right, let me do a quick double check here. I think we have gotten through all of our questions and we have less than a minute to spare. So nice job on timing, Eric.
Perfect, that worked well.
So perfect. All right. So for anyone who is new to Automation Hour, we will be posting this recording. And If you registered, you should also get a link to that recording in your email follow-up shortly. I can't remember if it's an hour or a day after. But we definitely appreciate you all joining us for the first one of the year. We'll see you back here again next week, hopefully. And Eric, thank you so much for kicking off our Automation Hour 2022 season.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure. I appreciate everyone for the questions. I appreciate Michelle and Rakesh for putting this together and allowing me part of it. So looking forward to the ones that follow.
Fantastic. We'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.